Now, today marks 5 years since the tragic assassination of Babita Deokaran, a courageous whistleblower and senior health department official whose life was cut short for standing against corruption. Now, her murder sent shockwaves across South Africa, exposing the dangers faced by those who dare to speak truth to power. 5 years on, her memory continues to inspire calls for accountability, transparency and justice. Yet, for her family and loved ones, the pain of loss remains deeply personal. Now, tonight, as we commemorate Babita's legacy, we're joined now by her family representative, Gule, to reflect on her life, the impact of her death and the ongoing fight to ensure that her sacrifice was not in vain. Ali, thank you so much for your time. Shoo, 5 years on, does the family feel that Babita's death has truly received the justice it deserves, or are there perhaps still unanswered questions that continue to haunt you?
Good evening to you and your. Thanks for having me. After 5 years, nothing has changed, to be honest with you. The fight was won when the guys were arrested and prosecuted, but battle continued until masterminds are paid. But the problem that is facing the family now is that we don't know where the investigation is at, or if the investigation is still continuing or not. The family remains regarding further investigation.
Yeah, it seems we might have a bit of a problem with your sound, but we'll continue. So, Babita was killed after raising concerns about corruption in the health system. Now, what do you believe her case tells us about the risks whistleblowers still face in South Africa today?
There are many risks that are happening regarding whistleblowers. In the case of Babita, it's said that she reported that to her senior, and thereafter, shortly, she was assassinated. However, we do not want to say that whistleblowers must be encouraged to do their thing, because we do need whistleblowers, especially in the current situation whereby there's been a lot of revelation of corruption at Madanga Commission.
Yeah. Now, Ali, if you could just describe what your thoughts are with regards to the recent revelations around alleged corruption networks and questions about the relationships between alleged criminals and law enforcement officials, right? And this has now brought renewed attention to Babita's case. Does the family believe these developments could finally shed more light on what the reason for Babita's murder was? Yes, of course, we do know that it was linked to the Tembisa corruption case, but does it perhaps give a little bit of solace to the family?
Look, it's scary and it's a concern. What is in the public domain now, we see the people who are supposed to be protecting us as the public incoherent and collaborating with faceless dark cartels that are involved in corruption. And that doesn't send a good message to an ordinary person on the ground. However, we remain hopeful that someday the truth will come out. But the biggest problem now is we don't know if the case of Babita will ever be featured in Madanga Commission.
Yeah.
How we wish that Madanga Commission can be sustained so that cases like such as Babita can ultimately get their attention.
Correct.
It's not only Babita that has been assassinated. We've got other whistleblowers. Recently we have Mataransofu in Mfuleni. There's still an outstanding case of Mpho Mafole in Eguruleni. It's been a year since Mpho has been murdered, and surprisingly, the case has not even started in the court. The postponement is sustained, keep on going. And that doesn't send a good message to ordinary potential whistleblowers to stand up and do the right thing.
Yeah.
However, we also take into consideration the newly launched bill that is meant to protect whistleblowers.
Yes.
But the bill, just like the act that has been existing, means nothing if there's no political will to ensure that compliance is done. The government has factored in a lot of positive aspects in the bill, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. I think the government can do better than it is happening now.
In fact, Ali, speaking of that particular bill, we covered that that press conference a few months ago. And yes, there were some alterations, but the bill still does not encourage South Africans to be brave enough to expose corruption, to be brave enough to know that something is wrong in this particular company, in this organization, but they just don't have the guts as well as the will to put their lives at risk.
Look, it's not a matter of the bill or the act being good enough, as good as there's been a lot of good statements from various spokespersons of government. The thing is, the working environment, if the working environment is not conducive enough whereby whistleblowers will feel safe to report wrongdoing and corruption without being threatened, intimidated, in a worst scenario, being assassinated, that means nothing. And in this country, we're notorious for good policies, acts, bills, including the Constitution. The problem, do we have the will, like you're saying, to enforce what is written down? Yeah. Without that political will and determination, all these things means nothing. Hence, we urge whistleblowers to make use of civil societies. Civil societies, at least, that is where their safety is guaranteed without exposing their real names. And we also urge the government to collaborate and make use and collaborate with the civil societies. Because at the end of the day, we've got one common enemy. We've got corruption. And corruption, the money that is stolen through corruption, is the money that is needed for essential services for ordinary people on the ground.
Ali, we must leave it there for now. Thank you so much for that engagement. Ali Gule there, speaking on behalf of Babita Deokaran's family. Now this, as South Africa observed 5 years since she was tragically murdered outside her home in Gauteng.